Hello again and welcome to GPA Distance Learning. For today, we are going to read a story and this is entitled of Dog of the Future. Before we are going to start, we have a new chant for today. If I will say reading, you will say let's go. If I will say let's go, you will say reading. Let's try. Reading, reading, let's go. Let's go. Reading. That's great. Now let's move to our big questions. What happens at the beginning of the story? And how does the story end? Before we are going to read the story, we will discuss first the 5 vocabulary words. The first vocabulary word is currently. Currently means at the present time, or it means now. Again, currently means at the present time or now. Let's check the sentence. He currently lives in Al Ain City. Again, currently, now. Let's move to the second one, loaded. Loaded means having or carrying a large amount of something. Again, loaded means having or carrying a large amount of something. Her arms were loaded with books. Don't forget, loaded, having, or carrying. Let's move to the third one, manage. When you say manage, to take charge or care of. Again, manage, to take charge or care of. Let's check the sentence. You need to manage your time more wisely. Again, manage, to take charge or care of. How about the fourth one? Pleasure. Pleasure means a feeling of happiness or enjoyment. Again, pleasure means a feeling of happiness or enjoyment. A mother shares the pleasure of reading with her daughter. Don't forget pleasure, a feeling of happiness or enjoyment. Let's move to the last one, terror. Terror means a strong or a very strong feeling of fear. Again, terror means a very strong feeling of fear. There was a look of terror on her face. Now we are going to check if you can still remember the 5 vocabulary words. Now I want you to open your book on page 223. Do you have the book now? Now let's start. Number 1. People may be blank onto a spaceship and flown to another planet. What do you think is the missing vocabulary word here? Now remember this vocabulary word? Yes, the answer there is loaded. Loaded means carrying or having. Now let's move to number 2. We may feel blank when we read about evil space creatures. Remember this vocabulary word? The answer there is terror. Terror means a strong feeling of fear. So we may feel terror when we read about evil space creatures. Now let's move to number 3. We read science fiction stories for blank. What is the missing vocabulary word there? Yes, this is the missing vocabulary word, pleasure. We read science fiction stories for pleasure. It means a feeling of happiness or excitement. Now let's move to number 4. What are you currently studying in social studies? Remember this vocabulary word? Yes, currently means at this time. So maybe we can answer here, currently I am studying about the 7 Emirates. Now let's move to number 5. What is the most difficult thing that you have managed to do this year? So what is your answer? The answer there, maybe we can write like this, the most difficult thing that I have managed to do this year is to fix my laptop. Now it's time for us to read the story. I want you to open your book on page 224. So while I am reading, you are following me, okay? So the title of the story is Dog of the Future, and this is written by Estelle Kleinman. Again, the title of the story is Dog of the Future, and the author of the story is Estelle Kleinman. So we are going to start now. April stared at the big box. It was from Uncle Bob. He had moved far away in 3045. That was 5 years ago. He never forgot her birthday. She opened the box. Her eyes opened wide. Uncle Bob had made a robot dog for her. A note was in the box. April read it. She grabbed the robot dog. "I'll call you Joe," she said. She loaded Joe into her speedboat and she headed for Paco's place. Now let's move to page 225. Paco didn't think much of Joe. "A bunch of tin and screws isn't the same as a real dog," he said. "Oink," complained Joe. "I guess Uncle Bob still needs to work some things out. Can you come on my boat?" asked April. "Then I can show you why Joe is so great." "Currently, I have no other plans," Paco said. He hopped on the boat. Now let's move to 226. "Let's take a trip," said April. "I'll show you why Joe is a good dog." Joe took the wheel. He steered the boat away from the dock. "Can he really control the boat?" Paco asked. "Yes," answered April. "Uncle Bob says I just have to punch in where we want to go." Joe had a keyboard on his back. April typed in Tower Cliffs. Now let's move to page 227. The water began to get very rough. "Joe, I'm getting scared," Paco cried with terror in his voice. Joe slowed the boat to a crawl. A few minutes later, the boat stopped. "That's not Tower Cliffs," Paco noted. "It's Rocky Bluff." "Oink, Joe made a mistake," said Joe. Now let's move to the next page, 228. "I'll tell Uncle Bob about the problems. I'm sure he can fix Joe," said April. Joe tried again. This time, he managed to get to Tower Cliffs. They all stepped onto the beach. "Just watch the fancy tricks Joe can do," April said. "He can throw the ball and catch it." Paco wasn't impressed. "I prefer real dogs. They are full of surprises." Joe picked up the ball. Should Joe throw right or left? Fast or slow? "How disappointing," said Paco. "This takes the fun out of playing ball." "Just throw the ball," April called. Joe threw the ball, then he ran to make the perfect catch. April stopped and looked around. "What's that noise?" Paco said, "I hear yelling and barking." A brown dog ran up to April and Paco. His owner, Tina, was not far behind. April told Tina, "We were just playing ball with my robot dog." Tina asked if her dog Max could play. Paco threw the ball. Max ran after it. He dropped the ball at Paco's feet. Before Paco could get the ball, Joe picked it up and he threw it. Tina laughed. Real or robot, these two dogs are a pleasure to watch. Now let's move to comprehension check. First question. What happens at the beginning of the story? You can find the answer on page 224. Did you find the page now? I will give you 10 seconds to answer. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. The answer there is Uncle Bob had made a robot dog for April. Now let's move to number 2. After Paco hops in the boat, what does Joe do? You can find the answer on this question on pages 225 and 226. Did you find the pages now? Now let's start to answer. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. The answer there is Joe took the wheel and he steered the boat away from the dock. Now let's move to the last question, number 3. How does the story end? You can find the answer on page 230. Did you find the page now? Now let's start to answer. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. The answer there is Tina, April, and Paco take pleasure in watching the two dogs play. Now let's move here to our big answers. Remember the two big questions earlier? Then we are going to answer that two big questions. Here, what happens at the beginning of the story? A. Uncle Bob had made a robot cat for April. B. Paco was disappointed from Joe. Or C. Uncle Bob had made a robot dog for April. What do you think is the answer here? Yes, the answer is letter C. Uncle Bob had made a robot dog for April, not robot cat. Now let's move to the second question. How does the story end? A. Tina, April, and Paco take pleasure in watching the two dogs play. Or B. Paco was still disappointed from Joe. What do you think is the answer here? Yes, the answer is A. Tina, April, and Paco take pleasure in watching the two dogs play. That's great. Now let's move here to our quick review. All you have to do is to fill in the blanks with the correct vocabulary word. Remember the 5 vocabulary words? Now let's try. I am going to give you 5 seconds to answer. All you have to do is to find here what is the missing word or the missing vocabulary here in this statement. So you're going to choose here the 5 vocabulary words. Are you ready now? Now let's start. The first sentence. She blanked to finish the work on her own. What do you think is the answer? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. The answer there is manage. Remember, manage? She managed to finish the work on her own. Now let's move to the second one. His grandparents took a great blank in seeing him graduating from college. What do you think is the answer here? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. The answer there is pleasure. Remember this? Yes, his grandparents took a great pleasure in seeing him graduating from college. How about here? The product is not blank available. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. The answer there is currently. Currently means now. The product is not currently available. I shook with blank whenever I was about to fly on an airplane. What do you think is the answer here? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. Yes, the answer there is terror. I shook with terror whenever I was about to fly on an airplane. The car was blank with supplies for the trip. What do you think is the answer here? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. The answer there is loaded. The car was loaded with supplies for the trip. That ends our lesson for today. I think you're ready now to answer the online quiz posted on the Google Classroom. Thank you and have a good day.